thinking is rare not because people lack intelligence, but because they lack self discipline. They lack discipline over their minds because most people don't actually think. They react, they absorb, they repeat. They get carried away by emotions, noise, opinions, trends, and urgency. Then they mistake that for chaos, for thought, when in reality, clear thinking is the ability to cut through all of that and see what is actually true, what actually matters, and what actually needs to be done. And that requires effort. It requires slowing down in a world that rewards speed. It requires questioning in a world that rewards agreement, and it requires courage in a world that punishes independent thought. Because clear thinking often leads you to conclusions that are uncomfortable, unpopular, or inconvenient. That is exactly why it is powerful, because it is rooted in reality, not in comfort. And reality is where results come from, not from wishful thinking, not from emotional reactions, and not from blindly following what everyone else is doing. If you look closely, most mistakes people make in life are not because they didn't work hard enough, but because they didn't think clearly enough. They chose the wrong priorities, trusted the wrong assumptions, ignored the obvious, or overcomplicated the simple. All of that comes back to one thing: a lack of clear thinking. Because when your thinking is unclear, your actions become scattered, your decisions become inconsistent, and your results become unpredictable. Then you blame circumstances, luck, or other people, when in reality, the root problem was internal. It was the way you processed information, the way you interpreted situations, and the way you made choices. Everything starts with thought. Everything flows from how you think. And if that foundation is weak, nothing built on top of it will be strong. This is why clear thinking is not optional, it's fundamental. It is the skill that determines how effectively you use every other skill you have. Because even without talent, because even talent without clear thinking leads to wasted potential. Effort without clear thinking leads to burnout, and ambition without clear thinking leads to frustration. You are moving, but not necessarily in the right direction. And movement without a direction is just noise. And noise feels productive, but produces nothing meaningful. This is the trap most people fall into. They stay busy to avoid thinking, they keep doing to avoid deciding, they fill their time so they don't have to face the discomfort of clarity. Because clarity forces you to confront reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. It forces you to admit when you are wrong, to recognize when something is not working, and to accept responsibility for your choices. And that is hard. It is much easier to stay in confusion because confusion gives you an excuse. It allows you to delay action, to avoid accountability, and to stay in a comfortable state of figuring things out without actually making progress. But clarity removes that escape. Clarity demands action because once you see clearly, you cannot pretend you don't. And that is why so many people unconsciously avoid it. They stay distracted, they stay overwhelmed, they stay reactive because it protects them from the pressure that comes with knowing exactly what needs to be done. And yet, that same avoidance is what keeps them stuck because Without clear thinking, you cannot prioritize effectively, you cannot solve problems efficiently, and you cannot make decisions confidently. And life is nothing but a series of decisions, small and large, constant and unavoidable. And if your thinking is unclear, those decisions will be flawed, inconsistent, and often driven by emotion rather than logic. And emotions are important, but they are not reliable decision making tools because they fluctuate, they exaggerate, and they often focus on the immediate rather than the long term. And clear thinking requires you to step back from that, to observe your emotions without being controlled by them, to separate facts from feelings, and to ask simple but powerful questions like what is actually happening, what are the possible options, what are the consequences of each option, and what aligns best with my goals and values. And these questions are not complicated, but they require patience, they require attention, and they require honesty. And most people rush through them or skip them entirely, choosing instead to go with their first impulse or the easiest option. And then they wonder why they keep ending up in the same situations, facing the same problems, and making the same mistakes. Because without clear thinking, patterns repeat, mistakes compound, and progress stalls. The only way to the only way out of that cycle is to develop the habit of clear thinking consistently, intentionally, not just with things when things go wrong, but as a default approach to everything you do. And that starts with reducing noise, because you cannot think clearly in a noisy environment. Not just physical noise, but mental noise, information overload, constant distractions, endless opinions, and the pressure to respond immediately to everything. Because clear thinking requires space, it requires time to process, to reflect, and to analyze. And if your mind is constantly occupied, constantly stimulated, and constantly reacting, there is no room for clarity to emerge. And this is why some of the most effective thinkers in history valued solitude, not because they wanted to be alone, but because they understood that thinking is an act that requires focus, and focus cannot exist in a state of constant interruption. And so, if you want to think clearly, and you have to create the space deliberately, and you have to disconnect from distractions, limit unnecessary inputs, and give yourself time to actually think, not just to consume or to react. And when you do that, you start to notice patterns, you start to see connections, and you start to understand situations more deeply. Because clear thinking is not just about speed, it is about depth, it is about going beyond the surface and understanding the underlying causes, the root issues, and the bigger picture. Because most problems are not what they appear to be at the first glance, they are symptoms of something deeper. And if you don't think clearly, you will be addressing symptoms instead of solving problems. And that leads to temporary fixes instead of lasting solutions. And this applies to every area in life. In leadership, where unclear thinking leads to poor decisions that affect entire teams. In education, where unclear thinking leads to ineffective teaching and confused students. In relationships, where unclear thinking leads to misunderstandings and unnecessary conflicts. And in personal growth, where unclear thinking leads to wasted effort and slow progress. Because in all these areas, clarity is what guides effective action. It is what allows you to focus on what truly matters and ignore what doesn't. It is what helps you make better decisions faster, not because you are rushing, but because you are eliminating unnecessary complexity. Because clear thinking simplifies, it cuts through confusion, it removes distractions, and it brings focus, and focus is power. Because when you know exactly what needs to be done, you can direct your energy efficiently, you can act decisively, and you can move forward with confidence. And confidence is not about knowing everything, it is about having clarity on the next step. And that is what clear thinking provides. It doesn't give you all the answers, but it gives you a reliable process to find them. And that process is what separates effective people from ineffective ones. It is not that they have few problems, it is that they approach problems differently. They think before they act, they analyze before they decide, and they prioritize before they execute. And as a result, their actions are more aligned, their efforts are more focused, and their outcomes are more consistent. And this is not something you are born with, it is something you build. It is a skill that improves with practice and with intentional effort and with awareness. Because every moment you have a choice, you can react or you can think, you can follow or you can question, you can assume or you can verify. And each of those choices shapes the quality of your thinking. And over time, those small choices compound into a habit, a default way of operating. And that default determines your results. Because at the end of the day, your life is a reflection of your decisions, and your decisions are a reflection of your thinking. And if you want better results, you need better decisions. And if you want better decisions, you need clearer thinking. So there is no shortcut, there is no hack, there are no tricks, just the consistent practice of slowing down, paying attention, asking better questions, and being honest with yourself. Because a clear thinking is not about being right all the time, it is about being willing to adjust where you are wrong. It is about staying flexible, staying curious, and staying grounded in reality. And that mindset is what allows you to grow, to adapt, and to improve continuously. Because the world constantly is changing constantly. Situations are constantly evolving. And if your thinking is rigid, if it is based on assumptions that you never question, you will fall behind. You will make outdated decisions and you will struggle to keep up. But if your thinking is clear, if it is based on principles rather than assumptions, you can navigate change effectively. So thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comment section below what is one big takeaway for you from this video which is helpful and which is valuable to you. Thank you. Peace over and out.